Now, before we open the discussion, let's take a moment to revisit the overarching objective of the ISSB standards and where to find requirements specifically related to governance. IFRS S1 asks for disclosure of information about sustainability-related risks and opportunities to meet investor information needs. So that means information about all sustainability-related risks and opportunities that could reasonably be expected to affect the company's prospects. And what we mean by prospects is its cash flows, its access to finance or cost of capital over the short, medium, or long term. IFRS S1 requires a company to disclose information about its governance, strategy, and risk management, as well as metrics and targets in relation to these sustainability-related risks and opportunities. We call these the four core content areas, and these reflect how companies manage those risks and opportunities. So where does governance information fit in? Governance information enables investors to understand the governance processes, controls, and procedures a company uses to monitor, manage, and oversee those sustainability-related risks and opportunities. We encourage you to read the governance requirements in full, and you can find those in paragraphs 26 and 27 of IFRS S1 and paragraphs 5 to 7 of IFRS S2, which is our climate-related standard. Now, we'll start by hearing from ISSB member Michael Jancy to provide some more color and context to the ISSB standards governance requirements. And then we'll open up the discussion to our other panelists. So I'll welcome our panelists to be on video here. Now, Michael, welcome and good morning to you. We know that the overarching objective of the ISSB standards, which is to provide information about sustainability-related risks and opportunities to meet investor information needs. Now, what is the specific objective of the governance disclosures? And how do governance disclosures, in your view, support investor decision-making?
Well, thank you, Hamani, and thanks for your introduction and teeing up the content thank you to all of you who are joining this webinar. Looking forward to our collective discussion and your contributions to what's a very important focus. For my, as you say, Hamani, 3 decades in the sustainable finance space, governance has always been a fundamental, in fact, a foundational part of the conversation around sustainability and with respect to sustainability disclosures. In fact, when I think about governance bodies at companies, and I usually focus on the board of directors or think about the board of directors at that ultimate oversight role. I've long believed that they are charged and have the ultimate responsibility for safeguarding the viability of a company over the short, medium, and long term. And it really is that ultimate governance body that is responsible for ensuring that the company is in the best position to succeed. So this remains an important conversation. I don't think that comment or construct is particularly controversial. In fact, from my perspective, again, I think investors, regulators, policymakers, and companies themselves have long believed that governance matters, or maybe I should say good governance matters, so that I don't think it's any surprise that governance is one of the core foundational or core principles of our disclosures. In fact, you've seen governance highlighted in disclosure in a variety of different ways, including corporate governance codes, stewardship codes in jurisdictions around the world, and in sustainability disclosure frameworks that have predated our work, maybe most prominently from my perspective in the TCFD, for example. In those recommendations, where it was one of 4 core pillars of their architecture, which of course we've integrated into our work, and now we are the standard-setting legacy of the TCFD. So I think you've said it nicely in regards to the mission we've had at the ISSB. When we were established, our job was to create this standards that will lead to the disclosure of decision-useful information for investors. And investors have long told us that understanding what those governance structures, policies, systems, controls that are in place at a company are important for them to be able to evaluate whether or not the company is fit for purpose in regards to not just identifying those sustainability-related risks and opportunities that may affect their prospects over the short, medium, and long term, but also whether then they're able to monitor, measure, and adjust to those evolving risks and opportunities as time goes on. So I think that's what the standards do. I'm not going to get into the details of those paragraphs you mentioned in IFRS S1 and S2, but let me highlight a couple of broad takeaways from the standards. First of all, when the standards are talking about sustainability disclosures, they're asking for disclosures about those governance structures, frameworks, and processes at the overview level, so at the board level, board committee level, individual level, and so on, but also from the management level. So what structures or systems does a company have in place? What are the responsibilities that senior management have in regards to the governance of the corporation? So those disclosures are focused on both that highest oversight, the board, and at management level. Also, the disclosures are really established to ensure that investors are getting information in sort of two primary buckets. First of all, certainly disclosures in regards to what the companies are doing, whether or not companies have particular structures, frameworks, processes, controls in place. That's the one bucket, but also disclosures that will provide greater deal of context to that. So, how are these governance decisions being made? How are they being implemented? And so, like, who are the people in charge in regards to their roles and responsibilities? How are decisions made, trade-offs, assumptions, those types of things? And so again, maybe what I can say here, it's not just about disclosures about information on what's in place, but it's information being disclosed that can be material and really help investors evaluate the effectiveness of what's in place at companies. So that's important. Now, Hamani, you asked and said and suggested that folks on the webinar can look at S1 and S2 in regards to the details of the disclosures, which is true. We won't get into them. But I want to make a very important point here that the standards are not prescriptive. We are not telling companies what to do in regards to governance. That's not our job. We recognize that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So these are disclosure standards, again, leading to the disclosure of information that's decision-useful information. We're not being prescriptive, and I think it's really important for all of us to recognize that as we're reading through the standards. And last but not least, and then I'll pass it back to you, is that I think as a core objective of our standards is it's about helping build trust between investors and companies. Like if you think about the value of the standards, obviously for our primary users, they're getting the information that they need to make more informed decisions. But it's also true, from my perspective, that our standards are a really useful tool, a very valuable tool for companies to help them, at the board of directors, senior management level, to identify, again, those sustainability related or climate related risks and opportunities that can be material to their business, to inform strategy, to inform their risk management processes, and so on. And so when you think about the value it brings to both of those key stakeholders, I think there's one element here. And I think you could say this for the ISSB standards at large, but I think governance disclosures speak to this most powerfully. I believe that the standards are a connective tissue, in a sense, between investors and preparers. And so for me, the transparency, the authenticity, that relationship that is so important to a company's long-term viability and to investors' understanding more about the companies that they're investing in, it really is a core focus and a core objective of governance disclosures within the ISSB standards. So it's a theme I'll come back to, no doubt, in future comments, but that I hope provides a little bit maybe high-level perspective on what our standards are trying to achieve.
Thank you, Michael. And I like the analogy, the connective tissue there. So thanks for getting us started.